All right, so if you're working in commercial video for any period of time at all, at some point you are going to be asked to deliver a television commercial. And one of the things that you will find at some point is you will typically either be given footage in a 24 frame per second roughly frame rate, which usually conforms to 23.976, and you will have to get it to the point where it looks fine on television. Now, for television, we use actually a different frame rate. We use an interlaced frame rate, which is 29.97. Now, if you try to simply take a 23.976 video file format and then you just click export to 29, it'll look completely jittery and not very professional at all. And I worked at television stations for well over 15 years, and you'd be surprised how many ad agencies I would see that would actually deliver commercials to me incorrectly. Big ad agencies too that you've heard of if you've spent any time working in New York or Toronto or wherever. So this is a big problem, and I noticed that on the internet, nobody is actually given a clear, simple, easy explanation as to how to do this. Now the good news is it's very, very easy, and you can actually do it right within After Effects. Bizarrely, you can't do it all that easily if you want to split hairs at all, really, in Premiere, but you can do it in After Effects. So I'm going to show you how to do it.
All right, kids, here we go. Hold on to your hats. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to import our 23.976 frame per second file, which is basically your 24 as far as we are concerned for broadcast, which will of course be converted to our proper 29.97. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to click on File, and we're going to go on Import, which of course, and then of course File. So you can see that we have all of these different wonderful files here. So I am actually going to pick one of the files from Go Nitro, our syndicated series that we do for Fox, ABC, CBS that runs in the US. So I have the file right here. So this is 24 underscore cold opening, but it is actually 23.976. So I've selected it. Now I'm going to hit open. So now that I've hit open, I can see it in my pane, in my project pane on the left-hand side here. And I can see that After Effects knows that it's the correct frame rate because it says right here 23.976. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to right-click right here, and I'm going to select the third thing down that says New Comp from Selection. And there we go. So what that does is it, instead of me having to go and do it manually and possibly risk screwing something up if I'm tired, After Effects knows to create a composition with the same parameters as the original file that we are going to be doing our pull down. So you can see that I have it here, and now it's all open. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to Composition. So it's the third one from the left from File. So File, Edit, Composition. So I'm going to click on Composition, and I'm going to hit Add to Render Queue, or Control M if you prefer. So now what's going to happen is now we have our beautiful handy dandy render toggle here, and this is where we are actually going to convert our 23.976 file and do a telecine to 29.97, which is what every ingest server in North America is going to use. And if you're in a PAL system, it obviously would be 25. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to Output Module. So that's the first thing we're going to click. Right now it says lossless. Now here we're going to pick our codec that we're actually going to wind up doing this with. So what I always like to do, you can pick any format you want. I tend, and many broadcasters as well, also like QuickTime. And I am going to do an animation codec. So I basically have it default because that's typically what I use. And then I go into Format Options. If it isn't already selected, I'll select Animation. And I want to make sure that my quality is 100. Now, it doesn't have to be the animation codec because these are big-ass files. However, one of the reasons that I like it, and one of the reasons, well, the main reason that I'm using it in this tutorial is because it doesn't really have any compression for the purposes of of what we're doing. And so whatever you convert it to, it's going to give you the maximum quality so that you're not going to have weird artifacts or things that are going to tear your hair out later. So we're going to, as I say, so in this case, animation, and the quality is going to be a 100. Now, you can also pick other codecs, but for the purposes of this, we'll use this. For those of you that are used to broadcast, you might pick ProRes, which is very good, or DNxHD, which is an Avid codec, but for now we're just going to do animation. And we're going to hit OK, and I'm not going to worry about audio output right now because we will usually do that in post. That'll be another tutorial for another video, but so we're going to hit OK. So now we have, and you'll see that the output 2 has changed to an MOV file. So it's a QuickTime file with a QuickTime wrapper. Now we're going to go to render settings. And this is very important because this is where we are actually going to do our telecine, our 3.2 pull down for broadcast. So all this crap looks okay. You don't really need to worry about this crap because this is stuff that you don't really need to worry about right now. Right now, we're just trying to get you to the point that you're able to smoothly convert a 24 or basically a 24 frame per second file that is conforming at 23.976 to convert it smoothly. So we're going to leave frame blending on. So we'll do on for checked layers. If it says something else, I would change it to this so that you don't have anything weird happen. And the field render. This is very, very, very important. If you take nothing else away from this, take this. Make sure that you select upper field first, okay? Because if it's a high def 1080 file, you must make sure that you select upper field first. Otherwise, the cadence and the interlacing will be all screwed up, and then you are going to be in a world of shit. Why are you going to be in a world of shit? Because you are going to convert your lovely commercial or whatever it is that you're going to be sending to the television station, and it will fail QC. Because it will look at it and go, well, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense, and it will be rejected. And then everybody will be mad at you, and we don't want that. So make sure that you select upper field first. The next thing you're going to pick is 3.2 pull down. Now, if you see here, right now it says off. Now, you have a bunch of different options here. I strongly recommend you select the last one. A, for simplicity, and B, I find it gives me the best results for broadcast. So WWSSW is the one at the very bottom. So I don't really want to fill your head with a whole bunch of crap that you don't need right now. I'm just trying to get you up and running. This, I find, you can select any of these. They will work, but I find the lowest one that I have selected works the best. It gives you a nice smooth cadence, and I haven't had any problems with it. And I've just delivered 2 seasons of Go Nitro to Fox, ABC, and CBS in U.S. syndication, so I can tell you that it is a national broadcast-ready solution. So at the risk of sounding like a complete dick, if it's good enough for me, it's good enough for you. You won't have any problems, and in this line of work, it's a good thing. Now, the other thing that you'll notice that once I've selected my pull down, see this little thing on the right-hand side that says frame rate sampling at 23.976, blah, blah, blah? Well, you'll notice that when I did that, it went boop, and it changed from the use comps frame rate at the top to use this frame rate, and it changed it to 29.97. Now, the reason for this is because After Effects knows, based on the frame rate, that this is the closest and most accurate pull down it's going to do mathematically. So it already knows. So After Effects is really smart in that way. It does some other weird things, but that's computers for you. So this is one of the really cool things about it. So that's basically it. So, we're going to hit OK, and then we're going to rename this. So I'm going to change this to whatever, and then I'm going to hit render. Oh, before I hit render, this is actually pretty important too. You don't have to do this, but I strongly recommend it. Just double check the render settings toggle. You see over here where it says start, end, and duration? You want to make sure that whenever you're about to render something that the start is all zeros. And the reason for this is because sometimes And it always seems to happen when you're on a deadline and you have a whole bunch of stuff and you're tired and it's 3 a.m. and your phone's ringing and everybody's screaming at you and you're going out of your bloody mind. Sometimes After Effects will get confused and will start it a second or two late. And if you don't check it and then you render all those files and you send them to the network, they will be wrong. And then everybody will be screaming at you. And again, you will be in a world of shit. World of shit is not good in anything, particularly in broadcasting. We do not want you to be in a world of shit. I do not like to be in a world of shit. So in order to avoid a world of shit, I strongly recommend that you check and make sure that these are all zeros so that you will not be in a world of shit. Now, I might be compelled to apologize for my language, but I think the shocking language in this case is appropriate to ensure that you will not be, as I say, in a world of shit. So we're going to click OK, and now we're going to go ahead and render. So it'll start to render the file. Oh, isn't this exciting? So there's a couple of things while this is rendering that you can that is interesting from a technical point of view, which you may or may not care about, but it is good for you to care about it because it is also a good way to make sure that it is working. See where it's rendering, and I see the frames. It's going 46, 47, blah blah blah, which it would do in any normal file. But you'll also notice that now that we've changed it to 2997, see how it's going LU, so it's going 77U, 77L, 78L, 77U. What that is it's basically the interlaced, the half frames that make up the image because it's interlaced, right? It's converting it. That is how you know that it's working. And the physical manifestation that it is working, see how you got these kind of cool, wacky 1989 style 1990 Total Recall-esque lines that kind of show up sporadically here? Well, that is actually the interlacing at work. So that is how you can tell that it's working properly. So all you need to do is just double check that you see the L and the U when it's rendering the frames, because it's going to render 2 for each of those frames. So it's actually a half frame. I won't go too much into the technical crap here, but that's how you know that it's working. So if you don't see L and U, and you don't see these wacky Total Recall scan lines here, it means that you've missed something and you'll want to go back and check it. But if you've done everything, as I've said, I guarantee you it will work. Now, one of the things that you may notice about this is that I'm using an older version of After Effects. Now, you might say, if you are a fancy-pantsy person doing a show for Fox, then why are you using such an old version of After Effects? Well, I will tell you why. I also have the newer version of it, right? Because we license it, of course. But what a lot of broadcasters find is that when Adobe tend to release new versions, sometimes they just decide to change things that don't work well with servers. So we tend to keep older versions around. The other reason that I've done this, instead of doing this in, After Effects CC 2020 or 2021 or whatever it's up to by the time you see this, is because one of the things that annoys me about a lot of YouTube tutorial stuff, which oddly there isn't anything that shows as Telecine Pro. So it shows you how to remove it, but not actually how to do it in the first place, which is really important. But what annoys me is there always seems to be this assumption that you are using the latest, greatest piece of software, and if you don't have this year's version, then, suddenly you're the scourge of the earth and you should basically get your head out of whatever cave you're living in. I don't buy that. That's not the real world, and I think it's a pile of crap. And so I like CS6. It works for me. If I need to do something fancy, then I will use a newer version of After Effects if it's something I absolutely need to do. But for the purposes of broadcast, doing a national TV show that runs across the United States, CS6 is reliable. It works for me. And more importantly, for the purposes of this, you might not have the fancy-dancy latest version, and frankly, After Effects hasn't really changed that much over the last 20 years. I mean, they've added all kinds of cool stuff, which is very cool. But the basic functionality is about the same. And I don't think it's right that, if you've already invested, or maybe you haven't invested in the software, hint hint, but you should be able to work with what you have. So this is one of those things that is really, really important. And there's Armando kicking the crap out of Richard, and subsequently will be kicking the crap out of me at Krav Maga class. So the other thing that I wanted to go into while you're still watching and while this is rendering and we're filling time is, yes, some of you in the world of YouTube might say, oh, well, television, why should I have to do this? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Television is still going to be around for a little while yet. And for that reason, television still has a cachet to it. And if you want to take the technicalities out of it, you'll notice that these big, huge YouTube stars that end up getting offered a talk show on NBC or CBS or ABC or whatever, you ever notice that none of them ever say no? You know what I mean? I mean, if it's so not the future and TV is so not in anymore, then why are they accepting these TV gigs? TV is important for cachet, and it helps to build your brand. And I see a lot of YouTubers that are producing some, nice looking content, and then they flip out when a TV station or network asks them to provide something, and then it fails QC because it's wrong. So it's important to understand the mechanics of why things work. One, it makes your life easier. So if an opportunity comes your way, you know how to do it properly. Two, it's good for that because you want your work to look as good as it possibly can. So you want to make sure that when you have your stuff on TV, or somebody calls you from the Today Show or whatever, that it's being presented in the best possible light, and you don't look like an amateur. Maybe you don't care if you look like an amateur, but if that opportunity, you want to put your best foot forward. And the most important thing, or depending on if you want to go strictly in terms of vanity and or professional pride, and I certainly fall into that camp, is it makes your life easier and it makes the network's life easier. It's good to be able to provide a file and assets that the TV network and their ingest servers can understand and parse, because the easier you make it for the TV producers that are putting your content on, the more likely they're going to want to help you out down the line. So if you're remembered as a huge pain in the ass that complained about having to provide some file format and then they had to have their technical guys do it for you, they're less likely to turn around and invite you back if you're known as being a pain in the ass. And sometimes being a prima donna doesn't really pay off, and you might not feel it now, but you'll feel it later. So be the person that has set it up properly, and you also have the personal pride of knowing that when you are doing something for television, you know how to do a proper interlaced file, and you're not going to have your time sucked up by having QC come back and say, hey, wait a minute, your file isn't right. Because the easier you make it on yourself and the easier you make it on the ingest guys, the more likely that they're going to call you back and give you more publicity for what you want. And for those of you that already might be working in commercial production or are working in-house at a local television station and just want to bring up your A level a little bit, right? Because just because you're working at a local station doesn't mean you have to do stuff that has that 80s local look. It's nice to be able to shoot something in 24 frames a second or 23.976, which is a universally recognized cinematic frame rate, and that looks good, and then have it run locally. Like it looks really nice, and it has a more polished, slick look for commercials, and it makes clients happier. And the other thing is by just knowing how to do a proper telecine 3.2 pull down, it really brings that level up. And this is a method that's worked incredibly well for me, and I can tell you that it's worked really well for me for years, and it's gotten us through to coming up to 3 seasons of a national U.S. syndicated show. So it really, really works well. And I think it's really important to be able to, bring in assets that work properly. And so hopefully this helped you out a little bit. And if it helped you out, by all means, please hit that subscribe button. And I hope to do some more of these things that I find are not on YouTube. I really have no idea why nobody's done this, because it's actually pretty simple. But be that as it may, now you know. And if you have any stories, by all means, leave a comment, email me, give me a shout. And, and the other last little bit I'll ask you to do before I stop yammering here. And, of course, by all means, Go Nitro is very likely running on a Fox, CBS, CW, ABC station near you. So please do watch. That also helps too. But the subscribe button is even nicer in the world of instant gratification. So I hope this worked for you, and hopefully I'll be able to bring you some other cool stuff that'll help you bring your A game in case the TV stations start a knocking.